Welcome to the Virtual Business Show. I'm Lynn Prowse-Bishop, and today we're looking at something that's been simmering under the surface for years and has just officially blown up: the real cost of cheap offshore freelancers. Since 2007, thanks to books like Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek, business owners have been told to escape the 9-to-5 and join the new rich by outsourcing their work to offshore freelancers for just a few bucks an hour. And some did exactly that, paying as little as $2 to $10 an hour, some even as little as 50 cents an hour, to workers in countries like the Philippines. And look, if you've followed me for a while, you already know my stance on this. There's enough work for us all. But what I've always struggled with is the race to the bottom, when clients expect skilled services for $5 an hour and treat people like machines. Rates shouldn't be based on geography. They should be based on skill, value, and impact. Otherwise, let's be real, it's exploitation dressed up as entrepreneurship. There's a couple of episodes at the podcast on exactly this topic. I'll share links to those in the show notes. But for nearly 20 years, Australian businesses have happily danced around local employment laws by hiring offshore freelancers. Meanwhile, the ATO was busy cancelling ABNs left, right and centre here at home, chasing down Aussie sole traders who they felt weren't real businesses, while big businesses got a free pass. But that party might be coming to an end. A landmark ruling by the Fair Work Commission is a watershed moment that has changed the game. A Filipino VA, who was let go by her Aussie client, took them to the Commission for unfair dismissal. She was offshore, working from the Philippines, and yet the Commission found she was an employee of an Australian business, which means she was entitled to Australian employment protections, including minimum wage standards. As at today, that's $24.87 an hour. For years, I have talked about what differentiates employees from independent contractors and shared tools on how you can check. If you're working with freelancers, here or offshore, and you're setting their hours, managing or micromanaging them, which Tim Ferriss actually suggests you do in his book, providing their equipment or software, having them do core business tasks, or telling them what you'll pay them, then guess what? You're not hiring a contractor. You're employing someone. And that opens you up to all the obligations and liabilities that come with employment, whether they're in Cairns or Cebu. The honeymoon is over for businesses dodging obligations in the name of a better bottom line. The business involved in the ruling cried poor, saying their offshore worker earned more than a senior solicitor or airline pilot in the Philippines. But here's my response to that. You don't price people based on where they live. You price based on the service you're getting. And actually, you don't price at all. Your contractor does. They'll tell you what they're going to charge. And let's be honest, this cheap VA story isn't even true anymore. With all the hidden costs like time zone delays, data security risks, legal exposure, cultural gaps, and the endless hand-holding, that once bargain $5 hire ends up costing you far more than a local expert. Speaking of, Ingrid Beyer from the VA Institute sums it up perfectly. She says, this ruling sets a new precedent. If you're engaging offshore VAs in a way that mirrors employment, you may now be liable for far more than you bargained for. When you factor in legal risks, cultural misalignments, and the hidden cost of micromanagement, that once cheap option becomes the most expensive mistake a business can make. So where does that leave businesses? The Australian business on the losing side of this decision said businesses employ offshore workers because they can't afford in the current economy to have the same work done by Australian employees. Here's the thing, you have options. You've always had options. You don't have to employ staff, and you don't have to risk breaching the Fair Work Act to get affordable support. Australian virtual assistants have been providing secure, professional, confidential remote support since way before it was cool, since the 1990s. We understand local business and local laws and privacy standards. We handle sensitive data securely. We protect your intellectual property. We operate in your time zone, speak your language, literally and professionally. No headaches, No hidden risks, no barriers, no legal grey areas. Just strategic, reliable business support that adds value. This ruling highlights the hidden dangers of engaging directly with independent freelancers overseas, dangers you are not exposed to with Australian VAs. So here's your quick checklist. If you're working with offshore freelancers, review your arrangement. Check if your practices reflect employment, not independent contracting. If you're using an agency, ask if they're compliant with Australian employment law. And seriously consider the real cost of your bargain freelancer. And remember, using an agency doesn't necessarily guarantee cheaper. One of the most shocking things I've seen recently is an Australian business being charged over $2,000 in a month by an offshore staffing agency. For what? A worker they could have hired locally, legally, for less. So let's kill the myth right here. Cheap doesn't always mean cost effective. When you factor in legal risk, data security issues, language barriers, cultural miscommunication, the cost of micromanaging someone in another time zone, that cheap hire starts looking like a very expensive mistake. The takeaway from this is, if you're currently engaging with offshore freelancers directly, this ruling may potentially mean you are liable to retrospective wages, entitlements, superannuation, and other costs. The honeymoon is definitely over for those businesses dodging obligations in the interests of better bottom line. The game has changed. And Australian virtual assistants stand, as we have done for decades, ready, willing and able to meet your business needs without the risks. Got thoughts on this? I'd love to hear them. Shoot me a message, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're a business owner looking to future-proof your support team, you know where to find us. As always, support local. It's not just ethical, it's smart business. Until next time, stay ethical, compliant, and stay ahead of the curve. I'm Lynn Prowse-Bishop. Thanks so much for listening.